Okay, let's get started. Week 4. We have been through 3 weeks. We are going to spend a little time to go through just a quick review. Don't want to do this every week in depth, but a quick review of where we've been on week 1, 2, and 3. And then this will be 2 parts, really. This will be the webinar, like you're used to, and then I also recorded a video, and I'll explain what that's about. So let's get started. Again, you'll see the Q&A. Put your questions in the Q&A, and after this presentation, we'll go through that. So, okay, we are live. We are about ready to begin. So let's do that. Okay. And as I said before, it's more interesting for you to probably look at the slides and to see me talking to you over here. So I'm going to take and stop the video. I will put that back up when we get to the Q&A. So week 4 is about building your board of directors and securing your professionals, and that's law and accounting firms. Super important step. Okay, so let's begin. So I want to go through a quick review here, and I will do this quickly. Boot camp takes you step by step from the beginnings to an acquisition and running it. So week 1, we talked about why the need for this boot camp. A lot has changed since 2021. We also covered mindset. I've covered much more mindset, and it's just that I've realized how critically important that is. Mindset in week 2, and also motivation, okay? Why you need discipline. Week 3, last week, focus, your environment, picking an industry, do's and don'ts, how to stay focused, set up your priorities, avoid distractions, gets everybody. How to develop your criteria and have a clear acquisition avatar, we did that, and knowing your competition, and then saturated and hidden markets, certainly. Okay, so what are we going to cover here in week 4? We're going to cover what I talked about, board of directors and professionals, but I also want to bring your attention to a mini class that I recorded and put that already up in Kajabi. I'll make that all live for you tomorrow. But how to separate yourself apart from the bots, what to do and what not to do, how to reach out, and some templates, how to determine if your outreach is working, and if not, what to change. Week 5, interviewing financial institutions and finding a deal, new tools, methods, types of finance, loans, we'll go through all of those. Week 6, negotiating, structuring, and funding your deal. How and why to have your first board meeting, super important. Week 7, managing your first deal and going after the next one. Running the business, how to create a management plan, how to delegate, KPIs, and dealing with problems. And running the business, toughest step, okay? So I want to point out a few other things that we're going to be doing. Obviously, we're doing the live webinar. Last week was the last Deep Dive Bootcamp live Q&A. Going forward, it's only going to be for Acquisition Advantage Bootcamp members, which are you. Exclusive, once a month. That's really important, I think, to stay current. The video mini class I'm going to talk about today, how to set yourself apart, private equity and bots. They will be around, tools and resources, templates, and how to use them, okay? You should know how to do this. If you don't know how to do this, you really do need to know how to do this so you can get into the previous recordings, okay? Don't share your credentials. You will lose access and no refunds are given. I don't want to do that. So this is how you do get into that. You're going to see your library, you're going to see your courses, and then view the course, okay? And you're going to see this, basically. There will be more because week 1, week 2, week 3, and soon week 4 will be in there. So let's do a quick review of where we've come from. Week 1, why this boot camp? We talked about the last one was 2021, and there were a lot of changes since 2021. We talked about mindset, confidence, your why, your obituary. That I got a lot of feedback on that was incredibly helpful to a lot of people. How to make a good first impression. In week 2, we talked more about your why. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, according to Jim Rohn, so pick carefully. some recommended books that I would recommend that you read. Think and Grow Rich, Release Your Brakes, that dealt with the comfort zone, and Selling DeVito, very important top officer. Okay, we also talked about affirmations. And for me, this was new, not the subconscious mind, but the I am learning part of this. That was, for me, that was really helpful, and I got a lot of feedback it was as well. Motivation, we had some images. We had 6 videos in the Kajabi download section. Don't skip those, go back and look. We talked about focus, we talked about mindset, we talked about how to prioritize. I personally use a Franklin Planner, and I went through that process of how to categorize tasks. We went through a project plan. We went through your environment, essentially where you're going to work, how to manage distractions, how to set up office hours. And then we walked into picking an industry. We talked about a SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threat. I talked about Search Funder and how you can get IBIS reports for free over there. Really, really good deal, obviously. Marketing, I put that video up. I hope you watched it. Everything you've ever learned about generating leads and growing your business is wrong. Okay, so let's talk about the action plans. I hope that you did complete week 1, week 2, week 3. If you haven't, go back. And remember, follow the steps, and completing each week's action items really is an important step. Mindset is the barometer of your success, and more people I hear struggling with that. I want to give you something that happened this past week. I spoke to a mentee in Australia, and he was a little frustrated with how slowly things were coming together for him. He had a bunch of LOIs also that blew up as well. And so he said that he understood what I did on mindset. But his affirmations didn't quite feel like they used to feel. So what he did was he also, in addition to doing the course, he went back and he looked at some sports people and what they did. And he ended up with some really good observations. He said that most of the Olympians, even if they were going up against somebody who was extremely tough, saw themselves winning. They knew that they were going to win. They didn't hope they were going to win. And he said he was doing a lot of hoping, but he really did work on that, converted his mindset, seemed to take, and that now he knows that it's just a case of following the steps, doing the outreach, and if he doesn't quit, he will get there. So remember those things. They're really important. Okay, I'm going to talk about the mini class I put together. I am not going to go through this mini class here. So that would be a waste of your time. I recorded it. It's in Kajabi. As I said, it will be live, but I want to give you what I did in there, how to set yourself apart. So it's in the week 4 area. You're going to see the lesson, which is what we're looking at here. Just click on that video, the image, and you'll be able to walk through it. But what does it cover? It covers you have competition and how to set yourself apart from that. Talks about making a first impression. I learned a very, very hard lesson on first impressions. I go through and explain that. It was a long time ago, but boy, was it a hard one, and boy, did I learn. Setting up your professional LinkedIn profile, okay? How to treat your other social media, Facebook, X or Twitter, Threads, which people were talking about, not so much anymore, Instagram, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of those around. So just make sure that that's clean, essentially. Okay? So watch the video mini class, and here again is what it covers, or what the video mini class covers. Correspondence, how to write, copywriting. People don't write as well as they used to write, and there's certainly some things that we can do to help that situation. Gary Halbert, I think, he's not alive anymore, but one of the best copywriters there ever was, and you would do worse than to go look for his things and read them. He wrote a newsletter on, I told you I was going to teach you about copywriting, and this week that's what I'm going to do, so look for that. Meetings, whether they're Zoom or in person, how to conduct them, what's important in that. So that's what's covered. Okay, so that's the past and also the preview into what you're going to see in that mini course. So let's talk about this, how you build your team. First, follow the steps. Awful lot of people end up not doing that. And again, you pretty well do that at your own peril. So don't do that. Follow the steps. Okay. Let's keep moving. Mindset's critical in each of these steps. Okay? So yes, let's get on to building your team. So why do you need a board of directors? And I certainly have mentees that have said, you know what, I don't think I need a board of directors. I don't want to use a board of directors. No, wrong. They give you credibility you don't yet have with their track record. They give you access to experiences that you don't yet have. Most of the people doing this are young. They give you access to the wisdom you don't yet have. I keep saying you don't yet have because eventually you will have it. They give you access to their contacts if they trust you and they're on board. And those are professionals, financial institutions, deal flow. And one of the things you'll see about good leaders is they get calmer when the chaos dials up. It's a learned skill, but you'll notice that. Nobody wants to follow somebody who panics and says, my God, how are we ever going to get through these things? So given that, kind of remember that, certainly, okay? Okay, so why do you need professionals? They give you many of the same things. They give you credibility you don't have with their track record. And they will say when they look at your board, and people underestimate how much of an impact that'll have, because typically you won't have a lot of experience, but your board will. So these guys must have something on the ball. Look at who represents them. Depending upon who does represent you, pick those professionals careful. They may give you access to their contacts. Again, maybe not in the beginning, but as they feel more comfortable with you. Financial institutions, deal flow, and again, they are also cool heads in the storm. And they've seen a lot of deals, and they've seen a lot of lessons, and they've learned from the successes and also from the failures. Okay? So whom do you need on your board? Remember, this is a non-executive board. There's a couple positions, CEO, CFO, COO. Those are executive positions. Easiest way to think about that is non-executive isn't in the office every day from 7 to 6 or whatever it is. Those other ones are chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief operating officer. They're all executive positions. You need a chairperson. Can be man, can be woman. CEO, CFO. I call it a quasi-CFO because in the beginning you don't have a lot to do, but you do need someone to help you analyze deals. We'll talk about that. Industry experts, accounting director, finance director. Okay? So what are the qualifications for those as well? Chairperson, someone you don't have to explain. They have acquisition experience. But be careful, I say, of the moniker M&A. You get a lot of people that were private equity. They may have advised on a slice of a deal, but not the whole deal and the different parts of a deal. And you want an executive rather than an advisor. Now, again, I don't mean with respect to the board because these people are advising you on the board. But the executive would have looked at or had people who he directed to look at. On this acquisition, what's the human resource side of it? How good are the people? Have you identified the top performers? If it's a manufacturing business, you get the manufacturing guys to look at the equipment, see how good the equipment is. You might get the VP of sales to comment on the customer base, contracts, what the frequency is that these contracts turn over, how many long-term customers they have, things like that, okay? So an executive, CEO, maybe CFO, a lot of CFOs are heavily involved, maybe a chairman, okay? The quasi-CFO has deal experience, familiar with spreadsheets, okay? Now, if it's a real CFO that's been a CFO he or she hasn't done a spreadsheet in a long time. They've looked at them, but they haven't done them. So you need what I'm going to call the quasi-CFO, who can manipulate spreadsheets, help you analyze deals, figure out EBITDA, and that is sometimes not a very high level CFO. Okay? Qualifications again, CEO. Do you really need that to start? That's a question. And that depends on your team's experience. What you don't know is what talent is going to come with your first acquisition. You may have a really strong management team and you're going to get a CEO from that. You might get a CFO as well, but we're talking about CEOs at this point. So what talent will the acquisition bring? Will you have that potential CEO? So can you answer this question? And you will be asked this question. Who has experience running this type of business? And if you can't answer that question with the team that you have, then you might want to be able to take a look at who could be a potential CEO for you. We can talk more about that if you want to in the Q&A. Industry experts, what talents do you need in running the business? Take a look at that. Understand, what do I need to run this business? And have those people on your board, practitioners, owners. So for instance, if it's a medical practice, you'd want a doctor. You don't need a slew of doctors, but you need, a small number of those. Maybe regional managers. If it was a large consolidator, the people who used to be able to work for a large company, they might have had the Northeast region, they had 15 businesses that reported to them, something like that. Acquisition experience is helpful in industry experts, but it's not critical. Why? Because you have that talent in your chairperson, but if they have it, that's even better, okay? Finance director, due diligence experience, usually Big Four. You don't want someone who did like taxes and advised on taxes. You want someone that actually worked on deals. They can be retired or active, but if they're active, you need to see if they can join boards. There are firms that say, we don't want you to join any boards. We don't care if you join any boards. We only want you to join charitable boards. So you need to understand that, okay? Legal director, a lot of it is similar. They've worked on due diligence and they have experience in your industry. International law firm experienced, you want big firms. They can be retired or active, just like the finance director. Same thing. If they're active, ask if they can join boards. Also ask if they've got any conflicts in your industry. Now, one of the things that's caught a lot of people in adding that legal director to the board is, we're going to give you free equity. Oh, so you just want me to come on for free equity and do all your legal work. And you are not asking them to do your legal work. And by that I mean LOIs, purchase and sale agreements for equity. And you're going to explain to them, no, we want you to be an advisor. We're going to have an outside law firm that will do that work. We'll ask you to comment on their work, but yours is not a client relationship to the board. That's what the outside law firm is. So important distinction. You will lose people if they think you just want to give them equity for them to generate LOIs and purchase and sale agreements, okay? So when you're building this board, in what order should you build the board? Industry experts, particularly owners, I like to talk to first, unless you are very skilled in this industry, because you'll learn a lot about the industry, and you will also learn a few things about what they see, what they've seen in sales, what they've seen, etc. CFO, then, industry experts first, chairperson, then CFO, legal, accounting, and to get that. What you're going to find is that you want the chairperson to interview these people as well if you can get them to do that. Some people have built the whole board and then gone to get a chairperson. And I remember one mentee that did that. He built the board. He was afraid really to talk to the chairman. And then he finally got a chairman. The chairman said, I want to talk to the board before I agree. He wants to know his team. That's no problem with that. He did talk to him. I would encourage you, if your chairman is going to, or prospect is going to talk to your chairman, you be on those calls as well. And so he came back after talking to the rest of the board, and he said, I don't think any of them are worth anything. So if you want them, I'm gone. If you want me, they're gone. That's one of the reasons to involve the chairperson early on. And from the industry experts, you will gain knowledge on the industry, so you sound a little smarter when you go after that chairperson. Okay? So let's remember your criteria. These people should be much more successful than you are for now. Hopefully you become pretty darn successful yourself. People whom you've vetted, we can talk about instant checkmate, but you will be surprised what you find if you talk to enough people. SEC violations, judgments against them, literally pedophiles, felons, on and on and on. And so important to do your homework and investigate before you invest. But these calls will surprise you. Most people are terrified of those big hitter calls. And they are not interested in the same thing that the small person in the organization, low level, better way to say it, in the organization. They're interested in, why is this important to you? We talked about that, remember? Your why. What are you going to do differently than everybody else? They're not usually excited about being an also-ran. Why is the industry or the world a better place because of your great idea? You don't always run across that, but you should know that, okay? Big hitter calls will be different for you. They're not usually obsessed with the following. Endless questions about your funds. Where are you going to get the money? How are you going to finance the deal? Never heard about seller finance, all those things. But big hitters understand that capital finds a good idea with the right team. So guess what? You want a good idea with the right team, right? They usually don't ask about their equity percentage. That's a big red flag if they do. And what you want to hear, and you will hear this if you're talking to the right people, I'm interested in this if I can add value. If I can add value. You will be surprised how many times you hear that, I hope. Board equity, do not bring this up unless they bring it up. It's a non-executive board. That means you're going to ask them for 6 to 8 hours a month, probably. Chairperson is between 5 and 19.9. Usually 19.9, because at 20 they may try to get board members to sign, which you're going to say no matter what percentage that is. Okay, but at 20% they feel like they can ask that question. CEO is about 5 to 8% equity. CFO 4 to 6, industry expert 2 to 3, accounting director 2 to 3, finance director 2 to 3. And these can be equity, these can be options. We can talk about that, but you're going to rely on your outside law firm to set that up. You may have a vesting schedule that you do as well. But you want quality. Don't try to do this on the cheap. Don't try to say, well, this guy wants 2%. Again, if that comes up, that's a bad sign. But a lot of people get funny about, well, I don't want to give up a lot of equity. This is the team that's going to lead you to where you want to go. So I would much rather have a smaller piece of the pie and to get to the prize than have a bunch of equity that nothing ever happens with, okay? So what do you say to board prospects? First, have you watched and followed that video mini class? Don't skip this step. It may not be here in terms of what we're doing at this moment, but remember, go over to Kajabi and look at that. But big hitters will, in fact, check you out if they're smart. So remember, this is your first impression. So what do you want to say, okay? You want to separate yourself apart from the bots. Your team will do that. Your law firm and accounting firms will do that. And your unique selling proposition, better known as a USP. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. The really important. A USP, or unique selling proposition, is what makes your business stand out from the competition. It's a specific feature, benefit, or characteristic of your product or service that is both unique and valuable to the target market. And this is an important piece. You can separate yourself from the bots with the right USP. To do that, think about what your prospects hate about the bots, okay? So, let's go through some examples. Amazon Prime, free 2-day shipping on millions of items. So that tells you it's free, tells you 2-day shipping, and they got millions of items, okay? Domino's Pizza, you get fresh, hot pizza delivered to your door in 30 minutes or less, or it's free. Not so sure they do that anymore because of traffic issues. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 50% or more on your car insurance. FedEx, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. Now, that sounds pretty simple, right? But that's written such that when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. So the vast majority of people are thinking, well, I guess it doesn't maybe get there overnight with the other guys. So yeah, this is important, so I'll use FedEx. M&M's, melts in your mouth, not in your hand. Same thing. By that, they are telling you, even though it's not overtly, that the other stuff melts in your hand, and we can all remember times when it melted in your hand. So, smart, okay? Let's go through some more. Zappos, free shipping and free returns 365 days a year. There's Shoe Guys. Apple, the most powerful and advanced smartphone. Volvo, for life's safety, choose Volvo. Bose noise-canceling headphones, hear less noise and more of your music. Dollar Shave Club, a great shave for a few bucks a month, delivered straight to your door. Here are some more. This will finish them up. Warby Parker, I never even heard of this company. My marketing manager said he's used them and they're fantastic. Try on 5 pairs of glasses at home for free and buy your favorite. Purple Mattress, the world's first no-pressure mattress. Whole Foods Market, America's healthiest grocery store. Tesla, accelerate your transition to sustainable energy, okay? So each of those USPs clearly states a unique feature, benefit, or characteristic of the company or its product or service and communicates a compelling reason for customers to choose them over the competition. So think about that. Think about what you can say as you pick your industry. A lot of times, as you can see it here, it's going to revolve around customer service. Okay. Everybody wants scripts, but be careful with scripts. They often sound like scripts, and particularly when you're doing a script, your listening skills usually suck, to be candid with you. So if you want to prove that to yourself, if you don't believe this, write out a script, record the script that you've written, and then listen to it. And I think you're going to sound like you're reading something. People have used them before. What I mean by that is I've been successful enough with previous boot camps that there's a lot of people that have used my scripts. If the script works for you, great. But if not, if you're running into, I've heard that 10 times this week, then use your brain, use some of the tools we're going to talk about, and come up with a template that isn't that the same. Good marketers try something and then try something else and see how it compares to the first thing. If the second outperforms the first, then the second becomes the new first, and they keep launching other marketing to see if they can still beat it, okay? So they've used them before. So I like using bullet points. Why? I think it sounds a lot more like me, and I think that it sounds a lot more personal. It doesn't sound like I'm reading it, okay? Interview process, you're going to have an initial message. You're going to have a follow-up message. Your goal usually from the first message, we talked about this, is to get to a second one. But don't jump too fast. Remember, you are interviewing them, okay? Set up a discussion. Remember, selling to Vito, very important top officer. When you're dealing with the big hitters, the way they think is different. And that book, Selling to Vito, will help you understand that more than what we've talked about, although we have talked about that. Make it a conversation, not a lecture. Had a guy once saying, "Can I do my pitch for you?" I said, well, I guess. He said, okay, I'm going to read it. I said, why are you going to read it? Because it's 15 minutes long. I said, so we've just met. I don't know you. And you're going to start by asking me to be quiet and listen to you talk for 15 minutes? I can already tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to have a meeting. I'm going to have somebody that just called me. I'm going to have some reason to end this call with you, okay? So don't do that. Explain that you are not picking their brain. An awful lot of times people end up calling me, emailing me, writing a letter, whatever it is, and it's all about what's in it for them. So when you're talking to them, you know, you want to separate yourself again from all those bots that do that. Stress, board members will never be asked for capital. They will be given founders' equity. Ask them what's important to them. I'm sure you get a lot of calls. I'm sure that this is not the first person that's asked you to join a venture, be on a board. So what's important to you? And they will give you selling points. They'll tell you it's important that I can make a contribution. My reputation is important to me. It's important that it's a cause I can get behind. A lot of times it's not the money at that level, okay? And explain your why. You are going to be surprised how that pulls people in if it's a good why and if it's got an emotional aspect to it. And we've talked about that, so I'm not going to go through those again. How to start the conversation. If it's your second conversation, restate some of the highlights from your first discussion. You know, they'll understand that you listened, they thought about it. And then I like a magic wand question, and particularly if I'm talking to owners. And what I'll do in that is to just say, you've been in this for a long time, this industry. If you were looking at it, you know, where I'm looking at it from, what do you think are the biggest problems? And they'll tell you. Then ask them, if you had a magic wand, what would you end up fixing and how would you fix it? And a lot of times they'll be able to tell you something, okay? Explain your process. You're going after businesses that are not for sale, usually have older owners, think they've not thought about retiring. You're going to provide a transition into retirement. That also sets up seller finance, which we're going to talk about in subsequent weeks. And I ask, does this resonate with you? Especially if they're industry expert owners. So that might go something like this, is that one of the things we want to do is not go after businesses for sale. We want to go after businesses which are not for sale, usually by older people, haven't thought about how to transition out. A lot of times they just think they have to turn the key and leave. That's not the case. And so I just wondered, does that resonate with you, Mr. Industry Expert Owner? And some percentage of those people are going to say, yeah, it does resonate with me. I should be thinking about my transition too, but you know, I'm just too damn busy working in the business to think about what I want to do. So when that happens, write down the people that tell you, yes, I should be thinking about it. You may bring 1, 2, 3 members onto your board, but you may have talked to 50 other people. And those yeses are future acquisition prospects. And you would go back to them and say, I know you didn't come on the board, but I remember when we talked, you said you should be thinking about transitioning. We're now in acquisition mode, so is it time to talk? Some will say yes. Ask them what's important to them. Again, we talked about that, but it's worth repeating. Nobody asked that question. Well, almost nobody. You're going to ask that question, okay? How to use LinkedIn. Sales Navigator is what I would recommend. There's a lot of versions of it, but, you know, Recruiter Lite, et cetera, et cetera. And then build your network. When you build your network, first you want to get above 500 connections so you don't look like a newbie. And two, if you were to connect to someone like me, I've got 9,000 some odd connections. So when you do a connection request, and then you do a search after I have accepted you, all of a sudden you now have access to my 9,000. And if you do that 10 times, you've got people like me, you've got 90,000 people that you're picking from, right? It's a geometric change to be able to add people and to be able to increase your network. But don't get locked out by sending too many requests. Be careful. Probably 100 a week is it. Space them out. Send, certainly use your in-mails. Connect, and it'll say, do you want to send a note? Yes, send a note. But space them out. Another thing that's helpful is you don't have to read it, but scroll through their profile. It seems to fool the LinkedIn algorithms that, you've actually read something. You're not a bot, okay? So here's an example. We are adding to our non-executive board of directors. Even if this is the first person, you are adding because you're on it. I noticed your profile and thought you might be a fit. Founding board members will be given free founders equity and will not be asked to contribute capital. If this has interest, please let me know, and we can set up a short call to know each other better, or something like that. Doesn't have to be those exact words. Okay, so when you're looking for people, what are you looking for? Past public board member, past chairman, past CEO, past CFO, past owner, some current owners as well. Past international law, that's if you want to find retired. You do not have to, in many cases, use retired, but a lot of times it's very helpful too. Past Big Four accounting firm, you might want to say accounting partner. And then search for the roles in your competition. Things like regional manager, director of acquisition, director of business development. So if there was a big consolidator and these people worked for that big consolidator but no longer work, so there's no conflict of interest, they would be good prospects. They might have been a regional manager like we talked about for a Northeast region or something like that, okay? And then unicorns. Those are big, big dogs. Unicorn's a billion-dollar company. So, people that have left, you can try people that are active too. That's happened. But boy, you've got to have your game tight on that. So what don't you want to hear? And these are what big hitters will not say, almost always. How much is my equity? Oh, I got a lot of liability questions. Will you pay for my travel and expenses? Do I get a salary? You don't want to hear any of those. What you do want to hear, again, are the magic words. If I'm interested and can add value, I'm interested. So what's the interview like? This was a billionaires list when he interviewed people. So you might change this, certainly. He was doing this in writing, so that's the reason it's structured this way, without any other direction or guidance, i.e. no word limit or length, no time frame in which to deliver, no structure, format, etc. Ask them to prepare a brief statement on each of the following. So just before we go through this, just think about those things. No word limit or length, no time frame in which we want to see it delivered. Guess what? You want that to be well thought out, but you want it to be quick. You'll learn how much of a sense of urgency they have. No structure or format. Again, you're going to see how they think from that. Pretty well thought out. Ask them to prepare a brief statement on each of the following: who they are, what they bring to the table, why they should be hired, what basis are they prepared to work on, what time commitment can they offer, one important thing they think we should know about them. That's a great question. And have your chairman be part of the interview process at the right time, okay? So think about those questions. Who is interviewing who? You are interviewing them. They're not interviewing you, although they're gaining some knowledge of you. But most people get flipped on their head and they turn out to be in the role of being interviewed. Okay, so the tough question and how to ask it, and there is a way to ask it. Is there anything in your background that could cause a problem with financing or otherwise? And what you want to do with respect to that is set it up the right way. I like to set it up by saying one of the things that I take really seriously is the reputation of the board. And I think it's my responsibility to do everything I can to vet the people before bringing them on the board. And so I ask this question of everybody so that we're not surprised, and I think it's incumbent upon me to do it so that I do protect the reputation. And then ask that question. And if you do that, they're not going to take offense at that. And then after your final selection, have them send a picture and short relevant bio. A lot of people say, well, what do you say and to them, and what do you ask them, and what agreement do you give them? I didn't give them essentially anything. I would go through my interviews. I would then get back in touch with them, either in a Zoom call or even an email in some cases, and just say, I finished up the interviews for the CFO. I'm just picking one. And I didn't find anyone who I thought would do a better job than you, so I'd like to invite you to join our board. And they'll say either yes or no. They'll probably say yes. Okay, great. I'm going to put together an executive summary, and so if you can send me a bio and a picture, that would be great. And you'll see that executive summary, okay? That's important too. Okay. Law and accounting firm process, it's pretty similar to the board process. Why do I need outside professionals? Don't I have them on the board? I got an accountant, I got a lawyer. Yes, but that's not a client relationship. It's an advisory relationship. Big difference between client, customer, advisor. You know, you want them to be an advisor. You want the outside law firms, the outside accounting firms to have a client relationship, which means they do things in your best interest, presumably, not theirs. Okay? Important things to ask. Do they have any conflicts of interest? Ran into one of those today, which was a big conflict of interest. Okay? One of the things I always think about when I talk about conflicts of interest, and I ask board members, is they may say something like, well, we don't do any acquisitions, so don't have a problem with my company. Let's say they're with a big company. So no, we wouldn't have any conflict of interest. Well, wait a minute. So you're with a big company, you're in the same industry, right? Yeah. But you don't do acquisitions. No. We just manage our own things. Okay. So if you join my board, or our board, and we did an acquisition close to your location and took business from it, and was successful at doing that to the point that it harmed your business, and depending upon your stature in the company, you might be in a board meeting where, hey, we got a new company that's taken some of our business, and hey, Jim, we looked at their board of directors. You are on the board of directors. What the heck is that about? Might be Jim's last day. So even though they don't see it as a conflict of interest, it is a conflict of interest, okay? What is their background in the industry? What will they do? And I'm talking about legal and accounting, but I wanted to go through that explanation of what a board member conflict would be, because you get a better feel for it and you've got a better understanding of how to do that with a law firm and accounting firm. If you're doing real estate, you're not going to be the only person they represent. So how do you treat confidential information? How do you separate so that trades from one business aren't passed to another, et cetera, okay? What are they going to do? They're going to do some introductions. They're going to do due diligence. They're going to do LOIs, purchase and sale agreements. Again, this is the outside law firm and accounting. And they're going to do, I hope, closings for you as well. So after you complete your board, you should put together a professional executive summary. Not just words on paper. We don't live in that world anymore. There's graphics, et cetera. So remember to get the input and permission from your board. When you're asking for the bio, when you're asking for the picture, again, tell them you're going to put together an executive summary. explain how you're going to use that. You're going to use it for law firms, accounting firms, financial institutions, and prospects, but you will see the finished version before it's sent out. Probably for a large degree, you're going to end up using that executive summary to take pieces to put on a one-page website. Now, if you don't know how to do that, you can email me, and I will give you the recommendation of the person who did both of my executive summaries. I have no financial interest in her work. I just think she did a great job, or I don't think she did do a great job for me. So I wanted to be able to, if people wanted to, put you in touch with somebody who I have a lot of faith in. Okay, sections: mission statement, objective overview, industry overview, SWOT analysis, you know what all these are now, business strategy, conclusions, citations. Citations are where did you get these graphs from and this data from. Bios, and I bolded this because this is the most important part. A lot of people will just skip over the text and go to the bios, and they want to see who is on this board. And you're going to use graphics. It should be graphically pleasing. Again, not just like opening up a book 20 years ago and reading words on a piece of paper. Okay? So, what do you want from the law and accounting firms? You want discounted and delayed rolled fees, meaning that on failed transactions, you're going to have them discount their fees up to 100% in some cases. Having a lot of people, as I record this, that are getting 100% discount with no premium, which is new. More so because of the private equity fall off in business, that they're looking for business. During the pandemic, they laid off lawyers. You're starting to see that again happen. So discounted and delayed, which was also called rolled fees. You're going to be asking for the private equity AFA, alternate fee arrangement. You don't want a cap. You don't want a time frame if you can avoid those. But don't use the following words when dealing with the accounting firm: success or contingent, because they're going to say, nope, we can't do that. We got to remain objective, okay? So you can use LinkedIn, certainly, but a lot of people don't spend the amount of time on LinkedIn that we spend on LinkedIn. So Google is a pretty effective way. You can Google top healthcare law firms, top healthcare accounting firms in wherever you are, okay? Then reach out to them directly by email, and and remember, they'll check you out. So have a clean social media. Don't have stuff from 10 years ago on Facebook where you were at a rave doing whatever you shouldn't have been doing sometimes, right? Consider a one-page website. Again, somebody like who I would recommend for the executive summary also does that, but you may be able to have somebody do it or do it yourself. And get a professional email. Get a domain. It costs next to nothing. Think about what corporate name you want. Have it match up with the website that you're going to have. But you don't want emails that say, Jim@AOL.com, Jim@gmail.com. Jim@hotmail.com. Doesn't make you sound like you got much of an organization, which I know is the beginning. Okay, so what email template? Mr. Smith, we're interviewing firms to represent us in our acquisitions, and your experience as chair of the Healthcare Transactions Group at ABC Law Firm, whatever it is the reason I'm contacting you. So when they read this, the first thing, most important thing you've already said. I'm a principal and leading a team to successfully complete an acquisition program of whatever the industry is within wherever you're doing it. I do not know if your firm's current activities and or board positions would pose a conflict, but if not, I would welcome having a discussion. What you pretty subtly do there is say you've got integrity, okay? If you have an interest in learning more, I will forward a short executive summary so you can make an informed decision. Thank you, and I look forward to receiving your message. Now, if you're using these templates and they're working for you, great, use them. But if they're not, if you're not getting the response that you want, then make some changes, okay? Don't be a bot and keep hammering with the same message that they've heard over and over if that's happening to you. Develop your own template. And guess what? Someone even put together a course on this. BruceWhipple.com/AI. And, that's a course that sits up on BruceWhipple.com, done by my marketing manager and me, mostly my marketing manager, how to use AI to supercharge your business acquisition. Really good course. Think about that. It will help you to use things like ChatGPT, et cetera, et cetera. And I've had people that, for instance, have taken their obituary, have taken their life story, put it into ChatGPT and said things like, make it more vivid. And it did an excellent job. If you are using it the right letters or emails, it almost always says, I hope this email finds you well. I hope this letter finds you well. For me, I see that so much now. I know it's an AI-generated letter. So again, don't just follow. Put your input into it. Okay. Now you are going to and must kiss a lot of frogs. There is absolutely no substitute for that. And you're going to make a lot of calls, send a lot of letters, send a lot of emails. As we've talked about a couple of times, this process is simple. It really is. But simple is not the same as easy. And remember, for most people, this is an emotionally hard process, but you will get better and you will get more comfortable with practice. Okay, so as we have previously, let's keep the questions on this week's topics. So let's do that. I'm going to come back on camera. I'm going to look at the questions. But remember, when this is put up in Kajabi, also go through that mini class. I think it was 14 minutes, maybe a little shorter than that, something like that. Okay, so let's go through that. Let's get me back on camera here. Let's put back up the Q&A. Okay, so let's begin. Mutrib, hi Bruce. I've made too many mistakes when I'm looking for an accounting firm. Before I took the boot camp course, now I know my mistakes. Well, you know some of them. I don't think you know all of them, Mutrib, but that's normal. I tried to change the message that I sent to accounting firms before so they do not remember me. I got no answer from accounting firms. Should I send my previous message? Well, if you have sent the message and got no responses, no, I would not send the same message. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and getting a different response or expecting to get a different response. So no, go and try some different things. Okay, boy, you're bombarding me with questions here, Mutreb. After today's webinar, I noticed that my CEO is not an expert in the healthcare sector that I'm focusing on, and the accountant on the board does not have experience in the sector too. Should I find others? If yes, in the process of getting accountants firm and done with law firm, should I stop back and go to the process or do both at the same time? Okay, so you know these answers. And one of the things I want to stress to people is if you interact, and I'm going to pick on Mutrib here for a minute, but if this is the way you interact with your board, you're going to have a problem. If all you're asking is, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? That's not the way to interact with them. The way to interact with them is to say, here's the situation. Here's what I think we should do. Do you agree with that? One, it tells them that you've given it some thought. And two, it also gives them the impression that, you know what, this guy's got a head on his shoulders. He's thinking about it. He's given some answers. And we can help him, and he's going to learn. Eventually, in the beginning, a lot of the things are not going to be on point. And they'll say, well, you could do that, but you know what? I had a situation like that. It's better if we do this. But to answer your question, absolutely the CEO needs to have industry experience, and you should have seen that in this presentation earlier. Accountants, it's nice if they do, but if they've been through other deals, it may be okay. Should I find others? Probably yes. I'm in the process of getting an accounting firm and done with the law firm. Should I stop? Yeah. Stop. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200, Monopoly reference, and go back. And if you've skipped a step, if your step is blown up, go back. How can we industry experts? That's not a question, Mutreb. Should we share the chairperson with the process of picking the board members? Again, you should know the answer to that, and I've also gone through it here, okay? Gabe, which one do we want to go hunting first? Okay, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you came on after I went through. Here is the order in which you want to do them. So go back and look at this. It will be good. One of the things I'm amazed at is how poor listening skills people have. Listening is hard work. If you have been on here, Gabe, the whole time, and you were distracted, you weren't listening, you were doing whatever you were doing, and I went through exactly the order to do them. So if you came on late, first of all, don't come late to meetings. That's a lesson in that. Two, if you were here the whole time, ask yourself, why did I get distracted? Did my phone go off? Why didn't I shut my phone off? These are all practical lessons, and while you may think I'm picking on you, what I'm trying to do is to show you the same problems you're going to run into. If you're talking to a guy, big hitter, and he explains something to you and you go back and ask the same question, you may lose him right there. Mutrib, what's the different equity options? Again, I talked about that. Mutrib, I do not have a USP. Well, then find one. Gabe, for what you've seen over the years in acquisitions, what are some of the best you've come across in the acquisition industry? I don't know what you're talking about. What is the best? Are you talking about what are the best? There's no, I did this in earlier weeks, so if you didn't watch earlier weeks, I'd encourage you to go back. I don't think they're magical industries that, oh my God, if I only picked that industry, it would be all different. I've got people across all kinds, and we went through the criteria of what you should look for, okay? James, I presume when you say using business owners as industry experts that they have to be retired, as being a current owner would be a conflict of interest, wouldn't it? Okay, that's a pretty good question. Okay, had to work a little to get a good question, but we got a good question. It depends, and by that I mean they may be a potential acquisition. So if you wanted to acquire their company and if you wanted to bring them on the board, no conflict of interest. If you're working in the Northeast and they're in California and you are not going to do anything in California and they are not going to do anything in the Northeast, that's not a conflict of interest. So sometimes it can work, but you're on the right track there, okay? Brian, could you please cover the most essential board members that we need to start with and start buying businesses? Okay, so the first thing, Brian, I did that already. And if you were on it, this question is 7:40, so I went through that. It's a little disconcerting, to be quite candid with you, because you're asking questions that were in this presentation. So listening skills, Brian. Could you please cover the essential board members that we need? I did that, okay? So I'm not going to waste everybody's time and do it again. James. Okay, James. I'm counting on you here, James. Hi, Bruce. If doing this part-time, how late in the evenings can you interview people? Can you interview on Saturdays and Sundays? Or will they think it's rude and unprofessional? Good question. So let's use an example. I mentor a person in Switzerland. He's done 31 deals. He left his job in July of last year. He had a corporate job. He worked 10 hours a day at that corporate job. So what was his schedule like? He ended up getting up in the morning, working a couple, 3 hours. Then he'd go to work for 10 hours. He'd come home. He'd eat a quick bite to eat. He had a family, has a family. And then he would put time in until he went to bed. And then Saturday and Sunday, he said he worked 10 hours each of those days. Did he do that every weekend? Probably not. Did he do it enough to close deals? Yes, he did. And so let's think about this for a second. How, if you wanted to talk to board members, if you wanted to talk to lawyers, if you wanted to talk to accounting firms, how would you make them understand that you need to talk early morning or late? One way to do it is just be honest. Eventually, I want to do this full time. Right now, I have a corporate job. I don't think it's fair for me to use their time to interview people and discuss this with people. So I'd really appreciate it if we could do this either early in the morning or in the evening or Saturdays or Sundays. And guess what? They're going to understand that almost always. Okay, good question. How do you interview? Kind of went through that. Brian, I'm having troubles to understand the core responsibilities, jobs, and time devotion for each board member. It would help to be able to understand better what to tell them when I talk to them. Wow. You guys, somebody comment down below. You did see this presentation that I put up. At least I'm hoping. I'm going to go down to the bottom of this and see the answer to this. Did you see the presentation? Somebody answer me. I'm amazed if you didn't, that somebody didn't comment on it. Okay? Yes. Okay. These guys are slow. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Alex. Good guy. Yeah, Norm. Yes. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, this is really concerning. Yeah, this is really concerning because I went through the core responsibilities. I went through the qualifications. Wow. Okay. Which of the board members should be close to where we conduct my business? I didn't talk about that, but they don't have to be in your backyard. I've got people all over the country. When I have my first board meeting and make things official, how do I know the structure to the executive summary? Okay, I'm going to be skipping over your questions, Brian, because I went through what the executive summary is, and we are not yet to the board meeting. Remember to keep the questions on this, okay? James, and the reason I'm going to skip these questions is I'm hoping, and I think I'm right, that there will be some good questions later on. So I don't want to lose the time to answer these questions that have already been there. First board meeting, talked about that. How do we interview? Talked about that. How do I structure the contracts? That's not something we've done yet. How do board members get paid bonuses? That's not what we've talked about. How do I get paid besides free equity, founder's equity? You can get a salary if cash flow allows. If we pivot from one industry to another, do I lose credibility? I don't know. Based on your previous questions, you probably are going to lose credibility, but you should know why you're pivoting. If you're the fly trying to get through the window, or if you've learned things about the industry, there's no shame in pivoting. Okay. Elias. Okay, here we go, Elias. Mr. Whipple, I'm currently in the due diligence phase of my first acquisition. I feel confident I can close 2 deals by the end of the year. Good for you. Not all my directors have contributed as much as the others. Yeah, you're going to find that. Some will surprise you negatively and positively. Not all my directors have contributed as much as others have. before I make any changes to the board, would you say it's best to work through a few deals to see how the board members comes together, or cut ties immediately? Okay, so the first thing I would do is, I'm assuming that this is new to you. I could be wrong, but let's assume it's new to you. So you don't have experience in evaluating people. You don't have experience in managing people. That's one of the critical skills that I hope your chairman has. So that being the case, sit down and talk to your chairman. Now, you haven't had a board meeting because you don't have 5 LOIs, so let's put that aside for a second. So you would talk to your chairman and say, I've been working on these deals, Jim, everything's great, but John, he doesn't respond very frequently. If I were your chairman, I'd say, okay, did you tell him when you need these things? No. Okay, first mistake. When you give somebody a task, when do you think you can complete it? When do you think I'll hear back from you? That's board members, professionals, prospects, banks, all that stuff. If you haven't set an affirmation, if you haven't set an expectation or given a directive, then you get what you get, okay? But talk to your chairperson. Tell them what you're seeing. Do you think I'm making my recommendation is, and give them a recommendation, I don't think Bob's going to contribute to us, so should I be making that change now? My gut tells me I should. And most of the time, those people are going to say, do we have enough data to be sure of that? Have you given them expectations? Have they consistently failed those? And if the answer is, yeah, they have, then guess what? Then it's time to make a change. But take the counsel of your chairperson. You're going to form a close relationship. And I think based on this question, you're going to do okay, Elias. Gabriel, today I interviewed an attorney for my board. He's in Mexico and did M&A work on one of the biggest pharma companies across South America, but he doesn't have experience in my industry, home health, or in my geographic location. Is it too far off base? Okay, so the first thing I would do is say, you've had a ton of great experience, but there's a couple of things that concern me. You don't have experience in my industry, and geographically, we're not in the same place. Now, if he doesn't understand, if he's in Mexico, as you said here, right, South America, if you're doing this in the U.S., and he's been an attorney there, laws are different, so could he possibly add some value? Maybe, but I'd want a U.S. attorney as well, okay? Daniel, when speaking to accounting firms for the first time, what information should I share with them, and how do I ask for delayed roll fees at the end? What is the private equity arrangement you mentioned? Okay, so I went through all that. Go back and look at that. The alternate fee arrangement for private equity is a discount for failed transactions. And any discount that's not 100%, the balance that's left over that you're obligated to pay gets rolled to the first successful. And what are you going to do? If you looked at that template that I put up, the last thing I said in that template was, if you'd like to learn more, let me know and I'll send you a short executive summary. So you ought to have an executive summary. First time I did this, I had 100% of the people I sent to say, yes, please send me the executive summary. We lend in your industry, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Okay. There's 5 acquisitions over 50 years career. Unrelated industries, enough for a chairman? I highly suspect no. 50 years, got to be at least 70 years old. It kind of depends on how big those acquisitions were, but typically you want acquisition experience within the last 5 years, and I don't know if that person would have it, so I'd probably keep it, or not probably, I would keep interviewing. Jim, okay, Mr. Whipple, I currently have about 3,000 connections on LinkedIn. Good. Do you recommend I devote a lot of time to growing a bigger network on LinkedIn, or move to searching for professionals directly? Okay, so I don't know what you're looking for other than that last part of the question. I think you're saying you're looking for professionals. If you got 3,000, you got enough. So, and if you got 3,000, just think of, if you were to put in legal, past legal partner acquisition experience, I bet you're going to get 100,000 responses in the search. So you've got enough. A lot of these people don't live on LinkedIn like we do, as I said. So you can find them there, but send them an email. Go to their website if they're active. A lot of law firms have a retired partner section where they give contact information as well. But reach out with the template I had when I did it. Dominic, what do you mean that our board should be non-executive? Okay. But then you say we still call them CEO, CFO, CEO. Okay. I might not have been clear on that. It's a non-executive board, meaning the chairman, the accounting, finance, industry experts, they're all non-executives. You can add executives to your board. So while the board is a non-executive board, you can have executives that sit on the board. And that would be a CEO, CFO, COO. But they don't have to be on the board. Usually the CEO is. But it doesn't always mean that the CFO has to be. But that's what the difference is. Do you simply mean that we are not meeting every day? You absolutely are not meeting with the board every day. Also, I know you addressed this, but I'm still confused about this. Can you elaborate more on why we need a legal expert if we're using outside lawyers? Okay, you're right, I did, but let me be clear on that. And what I said was the legal person on the board is an advisor. They've seen deals. They know what to look for in problems. They're also going to comment on the work that the outside law firm does. I don't like this. I don't like this. I do like this. This is a good LinkedIn LOI, but I would add this. So they're an advisor as opposed to a client relationship. Okay? May you please go through a quick example of an interview call with a potential board member? I did that. That was all those italicized questions, that I had. Okay. Austin, should I list my acquisitions company on my LinkedIn profile even if I don't really have one set up? Yeah, I'd be careful about what I'm doing there, because what did I say that these big hitters are going to do? If I was able to have an audience where I could get that answer real time, some of you would have said, you said they were going to check you out. So when they take that company and they put it in Google and they find there's nothing there, that's going to be a red flag for them. Depending upon where you are, and this has mixed benefits and downsides as well, is if you're in the U.S., for instance, you can incorporate an LLC, few $100s. Then you can get a corporate name. You might want to put the engagement letters with the law firms in that corporate names rather than personal. Okay, so that would be one reason why you might want to consider incorporating. Then you match up the website. So if it's ABC LLC, abc.com would be a good website, okay, from that standpoint. But other than that, what you want to be careful of is that you want to structure this, and this is why you want to talk to a lawyer, and I would talk to a lawyer on the board as well as the outside, and use it as an interview question. What do you think is the best corporate structure? Well, how do you think I should handle equity? Should I do options? Should I do vesting? One of the things that I really want to stress is you are putting together a toolbox. And so use the tools in those toolboxes. So many people don't do that. Okay? I hope that that answered the question. But go back and look at those questions. Okay. So yeah, but just be cognizant. Think about, how is this person going to check me out? And if in your question you've put the LinkedIn company, but there is no company, that's going to be a problem for you. So you don't have to reference a company. I'm building a company. Just leave it as generic as that. Leon, hello, Mr. Whipple. Hello, Leon. I'm meeting a potential chair candidate who is CFO in the largest group in my industry. That could be a good thing. He left the company 2 months ago and said there may be some non-compete. There may be. Should I still try to retain him as some outside advisor? Okay, so the first thing is there a conflict? So why would there be a conflict? Okay, he left the company, right? But many people, especially in that role, have signed a code of conduct, confidentiality agreement, very likely had a severance package or retired, and oftentimes there's conditions in there. And the simplest of which would be that he's not going to share any confidential information. But whatever it is, and he just may say, hey, I don't want to I was with this company 25 years. I still have some loyalty to this company. I don't want to do anything in there that's adverse to them. So just have that discussion. It also shows him or her that you've got integrity. You're concerned about the conflict of interest. You don't want to walk him into it. He doesn't want to be walked in. At that level, he's going to be savvy on these things. So just say, if there's a conflict of interest, how long is your non-compete? And know that. It may be, and you want a board now, I get that, but it may be, why don't we stay in touch? If after that is expired, there may certainly be an opportunity on the board. You certainly could do a great job, but at this point, you've got a conflict of interest, non-compete, whatever it is, that we can't have you on the board, okay? And they'll respect that. Okay, Josh. At what point and how do you formalize the equity positions of your board that you've selected? Is that during the first board meeting? Yes. And is there most of the time? And is there a document that needs to be drafted? Yes. So don't worry about that. Don't lose much sleep over that. You're not to that step. You haven't had your board meeting. You may not have a board put together yet. I don't know if you do or don't. But those things worry about later, okay? But yes, people will know what percentage they have. There'll be a shareholder agreement, et cetera, et cetera. Ebby. Hi, Bruce. Ebby here. On the LinkedIn section, you said we could have access to your contacts, but I can't access. I have 6,400 followers. How can I access your contacts? Okay. So if you send me a connection request, and if I accept that connection request, I don't accept them all, and then we are what's called first connection. You and I are connected. If you do a search and you click, there's a first connection. That's meaning you're only going to be searching your 6,400. If you put second connection as well, you're going to go to include my connections and all the other people's 6,400, all their connections. Third connections are, I got nobody in contact with any of these people. So that's the first, second, or third. Okay. Zachary, well, this is a long question. We're currently in the middle of second round negotiations with our finalist legal firms. Our current strategy is to convince them to give us preferred terms. Okay. 1, cite the executive team's personal track record of success. We have previous banking and startup. Okay. 2, cite the experience of our board and accounting representation. We have a big 4. Okay. Explain our game plan to acquire in the 3 to 5 years with 10 to 20 in the second year, 3 to 5 in the first year, 10 to 20 in the second. Okay. Tend to under-promise and over-deliver. I'd throw a caveat on that. We're going to do as many as we can, but we are not going to do so many so quickly that we lose control. We want them to be acquired, be stable, and we'll pick up the speed as you have. So those are all good. Would you have any further suggestions on how we can adjust this to improve our chances of getting preferred terms? Use competition. We note that some lawyers are trying to sneak set time frames on rolled fees. Yep, they are. So what's the best way to do it? You've interviewed a bunch of people. You've got a bunch of engagement letters, proposals, whatever you have. If you have one that you really want, but their terms aren't as good as one of the others, you can go back and you can negotiate. And then that's just a negotiation. But frequently, that person that you're talking to will have to get this approved somewhere, alternate fee arrangement. I don't know where they're going to have to do it, which is a question. Who can approve this? Okay. So let's say he said, well, all alternate fee arrangements have to be approved by the CFO. Okay. So how's your track record with your CFO on alternate fee arrangements? Pretty good. Okay. So how many have you done in the last year? I did 30 in the last year. Okay. And how many were approved? 27. Oh, okay. Or one. Okay. Not so good. So, okay. So now that I know what your process is, let me help you out here. We would like to do business with you, but you're uncompetitive in this area, whatever it is. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's more than one. But I don't want to send you to that person and that person say to you, well, how many times are we going to go back and forth here? So here's what we're prepared to do. If you can meet bing, 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 you can tell this person, if we do this, this business is ours. That's a whole lot different than just continuing a negotiation. So that's how I would do that. Janelle, I think. Hello, Mr. Whipple. I live in the U.S. Should I target potential board members in my same state? I always like to go after the best people I can find. And as I said, I've got people all over the country on my board. So, and outside the country, actually. As many of you may know, Dan's on my board as chairman. James, hi, Bruce. How do you ask the chairperson to be your mentor, or do you ask all of them while interviewing, or wait till the second call? So, if you're asking them to be your mentor, you're focused on what's good for me. A lot of times they will turn out to be your mentor if you are significantly younger than them. But you don't have to ask. You will see as that relationship continues on what that's like. And, you know, you might comment just as simple as, you know, I really feel good about this relationship that's unfolding here. What do you think? No, I think it's good. I think we could work better on this way, whatever he says. Okay. Because I do feel like you're a mentor, you're vastly more experienced, and he's going to say, or she's going to say whatever she said. So you don't have to ask them to be a mentor to you. That usually unfolds. Okay? Lance, if I want to do a conglomerate, yeah, a lot of people have said, I want to do a conglomerate because they've heard someone's been successful doing a conglomerate. Pick one industry and then be the leader in that if you can do that, and then move on from there. But focus is important. Huseam, what is the role of non-executive CFO? There is no non-executive CFO. It's an executive. Christopher, hello, Christopher. Great breakdown of these steps. Thank you. Would you give some context around sounds interesting if I can add value? Answer, does that mean most people are approached to be board members just for their name and not really for their expertise? No, I don't think so. They're approached for their expertise, or should be. But a lot of them, boards can be different. They are usually really busy people. So they're going to want to know why it's important to you, all those things I mentioned. But they're going to want to see, what can I do to add value? As simple as that. Simple as those words are. And if I don't think that I can add value, then what am I doing it for? I had, in a previous roll-up, I had an industry expert that we pivoted from that, and he said he didn't have value in the second one, and he said, you know what, I don't really know that industry. I don't think I can bring much to the party, so I'm going to step away. Okay. So he, first time, very much so, he could add value. Second time, not so much. Okay? So that's what I mean by that, Christopher. What is your position on the board? Founder's as good as any. You might also be CEO, but most of the time, you're not going to be qualified to be CEO. Would a big hitter in an ancillary horizontal be qualified for a chairperson? Depends on who he is and what he is. So, for instance, if I was doing, let's just pick a name. If I was, well, that's probably not a good name because he is involved in this. If I was doing automotive roll-ups and I had the opportunity to have Bill Gates as my chairperson, I think I'd take Bill Gates. I don't know what he's done with cars. I don't think much of anything. He's a technology guy. But name recognition, holy mackerel. And you're going to find, if you have the right board, that people react that way. People look at the professional level, lawyers and accountants, they go like, whoa, look at this board. So what are they thinking? They're thinking, well, you know, we might do some deals with these guys. But you know what? That guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, I bet you they all have personal business. And so this is a fantastic introduction to them as well. So there's more going on there than sometimes you realize, okay? But that's a pretty good question. Brian, okay, I'm going to give you another shot, Brian. I got here late for a meeting, so I'm sure that it was covered, but which of the board members should be retired? Okay, yeah, I said any of them can be retired or none of them can be retired, oftentimes retired, but doesn't have to be. I'm thinking. On my board, 2 people are retired, all the rest are active. Chris, in regards to the CFO and financial expert, is the CFO an executive operational full-time position? That's why I use the word quasi, because in the beginning, not really, but eventually, yes. Does it require salary and equity? In the beginning, just equity, but yes, CFO will be salary. How do the roles of CFO and financial director, financial expert differ? CFO is going to be the guy helping you analyze deals more than the accounting director, if you will. How do I know how much free founders equity each member should get? Brian, you should look at this presentation because I went through every one and gave a percentage. If I were to give you, and I'm going to skip over your questions from now on because they're a waste of time, quite candidly. Why do I say that? Because every single one of them has been answered here. But you, more than anything, need to work on your listening skills and observation skills. The questions that you've asked that were outlined by everybody here that commented that they were pretty alarming, pretty alarming. You know, get serious about this shit. Christopher, when looking for board members, I get a lot of send me your pitch deck. Yep, should I pass over them because they're not high enough in experience tree? Yeah, that's a good question, Christopher. You will get that a lot. A lot of times it's just to get you off the phone or a competitor that wants to learn what you're doing. So ask a question. What is it that you hope to see in what I would send over? I don't have a pitch deck. You don't? No. I can tell you from 30,000 feet what we're doing, but one of the things that's critically important is that I put together a board of skilled people, and I think it's pretty presumptuous of me to assume that until I have that team put together, that I don't know enough of the intricacies to be able to write that executive summary. Teams get things done. I want a team to participate in that, okay? If you want a one-page executive kind of blurb, again, the person that did the executive summaries can probably help you do that. I've never used that. I've just explained what we're going to do. So, for instance, surgery centers. I'm not a doctor. What do I know about operating on people? I've been operated on it enough, but what do I know about it? So why would I put together a pitch deck that didn't have benefit of those industry experts, et cetera, et cetera? There are some things you can put together, but no. Okay. But yeah, a lot of times it's just fishing. Fian, I am industry expert in the sector we're pursuing. Is it essential to add another one? Okay, so go back, look at what we talked about in terms of industry experts, practitioners, regional people, owners, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so yeah, what do you need to run the business, and are those represented on your board? When and how should we broach the subject of discussing pricing deferred feed with the accountant lawyer? Well, that's a pretty good question. So in the beginning, you're going to send an executive summary. So let me basically go through that. So you're talking to let's say a law firm. So you have sent the executive summary after the first email. You then have had a call with them, and in that call usually you would say, did you have an opportunity to read the executive summary? Yes. Okay. If the answer is no, I'd say, let me give you a chance to read the executive summary. It's important. Probably wouldn't do anything with them going forward. What questions did you have? You could ask, do you have any questions? That gets a yes or no. What questions did you ask? What sections did you find most interesting or most enlightening for what we're doing? Well, I was really impressed with your board. Yeah, it's a great board. Spent a lot of time to assemble it. Would it be helpful if I just walked you through our process? Sure. Okay. So put together a good board, had an idea of what we want to do. You saw that in the executive summary. Yeah. Board members, really important. Yeah, very impressive. Okay. Then we're going to be bringing on top flight legal and accounting on the private equity alternate fee arrangement I'm sure you're familiar with, hence the reason we're talking. Then we're going to go after businesses that are not for sale, very often older people that want to retire, and then acquire those with a combination of commercial debt or sellers' equity, sellers' loans to acquire those businesses. So like 1 to 90 seconds, something like that. So, okay, so you have your discussion now. You're interviewing them. Can you tell me what I might hear from you that would be different than what I'll hear from the other firms that we interview? That's important because you're saying you're interviewing other firms, okay? Yeah, so they tell you whatever they tell you. Okay, so I'm going to go back and report to our team. You're going to report to your team, I'm sure. Would you like to do a second meeting? Yep, would like to do a second meeting. Okay, good. So in between the first and the second meeting, then I would send an email that said something like, had some good feedback from the board, just want to give you a heads up on what we're seeing, what we're expecting. And that would be discounts of up to 100% for failed transactions and a small premium for success or something like that. If you can be competitive, yes, let's have a meeting. If you can't, don't want to waste your time. Okay, so you've set the expectation. Okay, so that's how I would do that. Armand. James, what do you mean the chairperson might ask the board to sign if they get... I didn't ask the board to sign. The chairperson might not, but financial institutions sometimes, if you got board members with 20% or more, want to try to get them. They're not signing. Didn't bring them on. If that's what you need, no. Might as well stop this process right now. Brought them on for their expertise. Remember, banks can ask you anything, and we're not talking about banks today, but banks can ask you anything, and should. Doesn't mean you have to say yes. Okay? Lucas, my situation is as follows. I've sent emails out to accounting firms and they have not responded to my emails. Here is what I think I should do. Okay, good for you. I will use AI to rephrase the email. Good. I will call accounting firms to set up a time for Zoom calls. I'd send an email. I will send them an executive summary. I'd send an email and ask them if they want to see an executive summary. To the partners at the accounting firm who I scheduled to meet with, please let me know if I'm on track. Pretty close. Go back and look at that process, the template that I sent. I tell you to send an email template unless you hear back, hey, I already saw this week. Sometimes you might hear that. But that's pretty good, Lucas. That's pretty good. You gave it thought. You had a suggested answer. Gold star. Okay, Carlos. Hi, Mr. Whipple. I have some questions that I would appreciate your insight. I understand that the CEO holds an executive position while also being part of the board most of the time. In this case, should the CEO receive a salary as well as equity? Yeah, they should, but you're probably not going to have it. So you're going to tell them, we're going to give you equity, and as we do acquisitions and can manage it, we're going to give you a salary. It's probably going to be starting to increment up to what it should be. Cash flow is what's going to answer the question of, can I give them bonuses? Can I give them salaries? In the beginning, probably not. I assume it would be advisable to contract the CEO after we've completed a couple acquisitions. Actually, I talked about that. How do you view the idea of having board members from other countries? Again, that's fine. What is your opinion regarding the chairman's suggestion to appoint some old friends? No. You do not want the chairman, if they put one person on, I worked with a great CFO, I think you should interview him. I'll add him to the list to interview. If you let the chairperson build your board, who are they going to be loyal to? Not you, chairperson. Okay. It's an important question, though. Maymon, good evening, Mr. Whipple. I've attempted and failed to set up healthcare roll-up towards the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I've recruited a few board members, but none of them have been in contact since. I'm thinking about apologizing for wasting their time before getting brand new. Oh, I don't know. That's on you, right? You have the responsibility to stay in contact with them. Most of them are gone. You just don't know they're gone. Is if you haven't talked to them in years, they've moved on, almost certainly, if they're big hitters. So you could write them an email, say that, COVID really took this to a bad place, wasn't able to progress it, made a big mistake in not keeping you updated. I fully understand if you would not want to continue. I've re-engaged, but I did want to give you the opportunity to say yes or no. Again, I think that's only fair, something like that. I'm just making that thing up. You could try something in AI as well. Brian, does the CEO have to be retired? By definition, the CEO is not retired. They're a chief executive officer. Mr. Whipple, do you find profit margins on IBIS reports consistent? No, I think they're low most of the time. Lucas, yes, these guys are slow. Well, some of them certainly are. If I have a seller that is selling me his business, would you consider it a good leverage idea to put him on the board? Boy, be careful with that. Alex, yes, I saw it. Norm, yes. Hadi, yes. These questions are embarrassing. Sorry. Yeah, they are embarrassing. They're embarrassing for you. They're embarrassing for you. And just think about this for a second. You're talking to some captain of industry, and you want to make a good first impression. Let's say I was that captain of industry. Based on these questions, and I just gave a presentation, right? Based on these questions, I would come to some very unfavorable opinions of people on here in no time at all. And that would be it. That would be it. When you listen to that mini class, and I hope you do, I'm going to go through the hard lesson I learned about first impressions. And it was brutal. That's one of the reasons I'm being as hard as I am on these, because if you can fix these, if you can listen, if you can learn, if you can think about what you're going to ask before you ask it, you may not have to go through those experiences. But several of these people, it's going to be a real treat when you interview big hitters. Some of you are on the right track, but go through these videos, learn these techniques, pay attention, and you will do much better. Okay. This was a great presentation. Thank you. It took a lot of time. Karen is a mentee. Sounds like Facebook questions. Yeah, that's the reason I don't do Facebook questions anymore. But up until this week, these questions have been good. This surprises me. It surprises me why these questions are so different than in the first 3 weeks. They were good questions in the first 3 weeks. Learn to listen so you can listen to learn. Yeah, you don't. It's amazing how easily people are distracted, and most of the time, thankfully I don't even know where it is, most of the time it's this thing. It's that. Bing, it goes off, I'm doing this, you start reading it, now I'm 3 slides ahead and you haven't heard a word I said. So when you're having a call with a big hitter, if it's on a phone, you can't do it. But if it's on Zoom, turn your phone off, turn your notifications off, turn all those things off, and be laser focused on the task at hand. Stay on task. Okay. Lance, I find that if I get 50 to 100% more search results on Sales Navigator when I include past titles, okay. Should I focus on higher titles, CEO, CFO? Yeah, go ahead and do that. Should the chairman be involved in the interview process? Son of a gun, JJ. I said chairman should be involved. I'll tell you what. If you guys can remember the questions you asked, okay? And do it fast because you'll forget them. Maybe you've already forgotten them. Write down the questions that you asked. Then go back and watch this presentation and go, oops, missed that. Oops, missed that. Oops, missed that. You are going to be amazed at what you missed. Some of you, not all of you. Okay? But answer your question, yes. And what I said, essentially, if I can remember exactly what I said, was involve the chairman in the interview at the appropriate time. Okay? I understand that we don't want a board meeting without a deal, 5 LOIs. However, what if the lawyer needs to meet with the CFO to discuss how to structure the company? Yeah, just be part of that process, okay? But then again, the other question is, why would you be structuring the company? I gave you a couple examples when you might, but normally you can do that in and around the first board meeting. Regarding the lawyer and CFO meeting, I comprehend that the company will be established upon acquisition. You got to be a little careful there. Not to get off on a tangent, but you want shares to be distributed or options pre the acquisition. Why? Okay? So let's say I'm giving you equity, free founders equity, and I'm going to do that after the acquisition. Okay? You should get all that sorted out before the acquisition. Why? Because before the acquisition, there's no real value in the company. There might be a little, but there's not much. We do a $10 million acquisition, okay? Then we incorporate. Then if I give you shares, I've given you, let's say 10%, I've given you 10% of a $10 million value or $1 million. That may very likely have taxable events to it. I just got a value of $1 million, but I didn't get any money. So how do I handle those taxes? Now, do I have to write checks out of my own pocket? So that's why you need the input of the accounting guys and the legal guys to understand how to avoid what's called phantom income. Okay? And I'm not a lawyer, so I would rely heavily, myself, I would rely heavily on the input of the lawyers and accountants to make sure that was done right. Okay. Okay. Lance, how consolidated of an industry is too consolidated? Above 2,500. I mean, you want absolute minimum of 1,000 prospects, and the more the better. Zachary's, I will be having my wedding shortly in the month's time, and I'm contemplating whether to invite my board or not. In my culture, it's offensive to not invite people. You got to make that decision. With a couple exceptions, one my chairman, and even that, it's a business relationship. It's a business relationship. But that's a you choice. What is the correct way to ask your accountant or lawyer to review the billings of your professional firms to make sure it's in line? Well, first of all, why do you want to knock them down? You know, if they're doing the right job and they're billing you according to what they said they were going to bill you, why would you try to renegotiate that? But with that exception, if you have a question about the bill, sure, talk to the lawyer on your board who, again, is advising. So that's okay. Which one is better for industry experts? Someone that owns a business, highly skilled director? Could be both. Both, okay? Armin, or both. Could be both. I'm planning to do acquisitions in Canada. Would that be okay to hire some board members from the U.S.? Depends who they are, what they do. During the presentation, you mentioned no cap. Yeah, okay, Carlos, question. They may say, well, you know, we're going to carry you through 2 deals or $10,000 maximum. Well, $10,000 isn't going to go very far, so you really don't want there to be a cap. You'll have to sometimes negotiate that, sometimes you won't, but you know, you want it to be, in a perfect world, there is no cap and no limit on the amount of transactions that will cause you to be booted if you fail them. But frequently, if you do fail 3 or 4, you're going to be having a discussion with somebody. Elias, to follow up on my question, I have been in the trenches for 17 months, so I have some board members who have been with me for more than a year. I have gotten significantly more assertive and firm over time. I bet you have. Yet the tone of my relationship with initial board members has been already set. My newest directors thinks I'm a ball buster. That's not a bad thing. And the older ones don't have that firm impression of me. Do you have any suggestions how I can reframe my persona for the older board members? Yeah, get your chairman to help you. You know, had a case where a young guy, no experience, had a great chairman. And this isn't exactly that, but it tells you what you want in the chairperson. So they had their board meeting, and one of the guys on the board said, you know, I'm going to use not his real name, Jim, I'm going to use. We're building a $100 million company here, right? That's the plan? Yeah, that's the plan. Well, Jim's never built. Jim's a mentee. It's his deal. Jim's never built it. So I'm thinking Jim isn't the right guy for this. That's a fun conversation with a full board meeting. So his chairman said in these exact words, don't you fucking worry about it. I have built $100 million companies. I know how to run them. I'm working with Mehdi. That's my problem. That's not your problem. Okay? That's what you want. As opposed to, ooh, I don't know, Mehdi, he makes a good point. What do you got to say for yourself? So you might say to your chairperson, you know, this was all new to me. I'm learning how to lead. You know, that was a process. I'm getting more assertive. What do you think is the best way to reestablish that? And anything you could do to help do that, much appreciated. That's the way I would do it. Okay? Daniel, is it best to reach out to accounting firms first or by email? I like by email. And I don't think it matters if you do accounting firms first or legal. It can work either way. So what I would be saying to you is try one. Personally, I like law firms first. But if I bang my head against the wall with law firms, I'd pivot over to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a break from law firms. I'm going to work on accounting firms. But don't do both at the same time. In a meeting with a banker who specializes in M&A deals, she's a family member. If my best friend, I met her 30 days. Not a fan of having friends on that. With graphs in the executive, how long can it be? You know, as long as needs to be, probably 8 to 10 pages. The bios are going to be like 2 to a page, typically. Brian, I'm going to try one more time, and then I'm going to skip. Being that my chairman will hopefully be my mentor and the most experienced in the business acquisition, how do I prevent him, her, from overpowering me or even take advantage of me in the process? Okay, Brian, you, among other problems, you have a mindset problem. And so why would he want to do that? Because you're afraid that you don't have what it takes and that they're going to notice that and they're going to kick you out and it's going to be a terrible thing. So work as hard as you can, have a good relationship with the chairman, and most of the time, 95% of the shit you worry about that's going to happen never happens. We talked about that too. Okay. Let's skip a couple of these. What's the relative value of industry experience for a chairman? Helpful, but not absolutely critical. Alex, okay, Alex. I got faith in Alex. I haven't heard anyone ask what to do with the board while others are being brought on or while going through professional. It's important to keep them updated, though. Absolutely. So we went through which ones to do in what order. So at least once a month, and perhaps more often if more things are happening, do an update to them. When you eventually bring on your professionals, update them at least once a month as well. Okay, Alex, good question. Yeah, keep them updated, and you won't be in the position that was asked earlier where it's been years and there hasn't been anything there. Wait, what? I thought we should have an executive summary to send to the chairman candidates. Go back and look at the presentation. I had a whole discussion of why it would be presumptuous of me to assemble a executive summary without the input of the board. So I said, I bring the board on, then I end up getting the input from the board to do the executive summary. Go back and look, okay? I was asked about the unique selling proposition. I said most small independents have hiring issues. By creating a larger corporate structure, we will better hire, train, and retrain talent. How would you answer the question? You could do a better answer than that. Only have a few minutes later left on here. But how would you do that? Now, if you truly have secret sauce, then don't give it away. But you have a whole lot of big corporations that are having a lot of problem hiring people. So what could you do? And let's just pick an example. You want medical professionals, nurses, paramedics, whatever. So, we're going to go to recently retired vets, talk to all the vets organizations. We're going to go after fire departments, see if they want part-time work, if that's what you can use. Fire departments, police departments. We're going to go to the colleges, talk to people coming out. Okay? Most of the time, these people are so busy they don't have time to do that. But you could do better on your USP than that. Thank you. I see why myself. Consider not doing these. Yeah, most of these questions are answered before they're asked. Yeah, are answered before they're asked. Yes, that's true. Anonymous attendee. I don't answer anonymous attendee. Daniel, Bruce, will the Q&A to this webinar be included on? Yes. And if you have looked at, I don't know when you bought this, Daniel, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But if I go through and I put Daniel into Kajabi, it will tell me, have you looked at this and what did you progress? So video 1, 100%, video 2, 0, or 100%, I don't know. So go back and go through those, but you should know, I went through in the beginning of this, how to get into your Kajabi account, and if you've missed these, go back and look at these. Is it a secret handshake to weed out fools for the first interview? Or I have some friends, no friends. Armin, first impressions matter. This is how you look, and then the first words. What's the most efficient way for you to open an interview with a potential board member? Well, geez, I did that too here. And if you go through the mini class, which you haven't yet, so I appreciate that, but in the mini class I'm going to talk about how to do first impressions. Hattie, Brian, skipping over you, Dominic, okay, great presentation. So, my takeaway from this is you get a lot of material today. This was one of the longer presentations, and you also have another opportunity tomorrow to go through that mini class. But I would highly encourage you to go back through this beginning of the presentation. You don't have to go through the pain of listening to the Q&As. Just do the presentation. Take notes. But if you remember the questions you asked, and there's a couple of guys here that tried to ask 15, 20 questions. If you remember those questions and you see those in this presentation, it tells you you got to work on your listening skills. And listening, as I said, that's a hard skill, but really important. One of the reasons I don't like scripts is an awful lot of people are thinking about what they're going to say next, and they're not listening. And you will learn much more by listening than you will speaking. And they will give you gems of, here's what I really think. You might ask them, what were the best boards that you were on in terms of how did those people interact and what lessons learned from them, and what were some of the poorer ones? And take those questions down, and you'll learn next time when you talk to somebody. Talk to a bunch of board members, they said the best boards did bing, 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 bing. So want to incorporate that. Okay, on that note, we are done with number 4. Next Wednesday, number 5. It's always the same link to get into the webinar, but this will be up tomorrow, so you can go through it then. But sit down. You're going to do 2 things. You'll have some feel for how many questions you asked. You won't remember unless you're really skilled. You won't remember I asked 12 questions unless you wrote them down, which would have been a good thing to do prior to this. We last week talked about prior planning prevents piss poor performance. It would have been good to, before this, you knew what the subject was at least, right? You should have known. And so to write down questions that you think are the most important questions for that. If you did that, then you could go back and look at the video and say, ooh, okay, yeah, he did say that, he did say that. If you didn't write them down, next time, write down the questions that you want to ask. That'll help you. But 2, to the extent you can remember those questions, write them down. And then go back and look and see how many you missed there. And you're going to be surprised. But there's a good lesson in that. And again, I do this so that you can get better and you can have more success. It does me no good to tell you, yeah, this is fantastic when it's not fantastic. So you will make mistakes. You will fail your way to success, but learn along the way as well. Okay. Have a great rest of your morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and I'll put this up tomorrow. Okay, take care.